Hey everybody, welcome to a very special episode of Facilitating Change. I am your co-host here, Mentor Dida, and with me is my friend and co-host also, Cole Hoover. And at the same time, we have a very special guest, Ali Fraenkel, who is part of our Changemaker Allies team and has been a powerful facilitator ever since we know her. And today she is going to help us lead us through an experience where we're going to reflect, digest together the State of Facilitation Report. And if you don't know what that is, it's a really interesting report and study done on facilitation that we're going to dive a little bit more into. We're going to share our aha moments. We're going to discuss key themes. We're going to see and explore what is missing, what else is not being talked about, and so many other things. We're just going to go with the flow. And thank you for joining our conversation. And with that, Ali, I'll pass it to you and take us forwards.
Wonderful. Hey team, I know we do this so often together behind the curtain, but today is one of those conversations that we are so excited to bring to you all and bring visible and make this a shared space for discussion and exploration. As Mentor mentioned, today's inspiration for us is this treasure trove of information and perspectives that came out very recently. It's fresh off the press. And this is a report, the third of an annual report called the State of Facilitation. It is something that is stewarded by the SessionLab team and their extended community of really powerful facilitators, leaders, and practitioners all across the world. And they inspire us because SessionLab is an organization really committed to building resources for the field and resources that make facilitation a practice and a set of toolkits and skill sets that is this living invitation for all of us to practice in our own ways. So they are making that easier and more accessible to anyone in the world with how they bring their platform to life, enabling others to create their own sessions, their own workshop designs really, really easily. And because they are bringing together these best practices from folks living and bringing this work every day, they have conducted this study now for 3 years in a row. And this is something that is a really valuable resource that we as a team have come to again and again to help make the case for why facilitation is absolutely and undeniably a 21st century leadership skill and something that we are all jazzed, delighted, and at the ready to make sure is something that everyone has access to in building their own leadership journey. So a quick at a glance before we get into some of the elements of this report and what it sparked in our hearts and in our minds is that this is a really diverse study, something that is bringing together over 1,000 responses from 78 different countries. I believe it was also held in multiple languages as well. And this is a culmination. This report covers 9 different sections that are all essential to how we are looking at and approaching and practicing facilitation today. So the topic of this year's report is human-led, tech-enhanced. And this in and of itself, I think, deserves a pause. I'll say it again. Human-led, tech-enhanced. So this is the heart of the theme that they, as a team and as a community, looking at all these 1,000 plus responses, felt was resonant with what they're seeing of facilitation today and what we sense as a collective is ahead for facilitation as a field and as a living, breathing practice for all of us. Team, I know we're going to go deep into a few of the sections, and more than anything, we are thrilled to jam on this together. This is a conversation that we've had bits and pieces of already, and we all felt really excited to say, let's open this up to the Changemaker Allies community, see what gems are there for us to discover together, and to throw the questions back to you as well that we are open books, ready to have additional conversations with you all to see what from this report and from facilitation in your own practice is feeling really alive, important, and even urgent for you today. So I'm going to shepherd us into an initial check-in here as a team of 3, something that takes us into the essence of what really captured our attention from this report, what's still lingering with us, what maybe resonated even more deeply than other themes that we came across, what was one of our big ahas in taking in this information and these many perspectives. Cole, I'm going to pass it off to you. What's an aha that you're sitting with?
Great. Thanks, Ali, and thank you so much for grounding us in this report. There's so much in it that I think anyone beyond folks who have the title of facilitator could get a lot out of this. And I think we're going to hopefully illustrate to you why that is throughout this hour. One thing that came up to me, it's possible I'm getting the statistic wrong, but there was a section in the report that was talking about a major challenge that they said, close to half of the facilitators who were surveyed said is that no matter how good their workshops, their convenings, their facilitated activities are, that it was really, really hard and people felt like they didn't have the frameworks, the structures, the training to really like carry the momentum forward. The way that they've said it is like, no matter how good the workshop is, they don't really know how to execute and keep the ball rolling afterwards. And as I think about all these really complex multi-stakeholder challenges, or maybe even challenges that require more trust building, more relationship building, if we don't have the skills, we don't have the kind of reference points to like actually continue the conversations, continue the workshops, continue the facilitation, we're going to have a hard time. And so it was striking to me that that was something that came up. Everyone, regardless of, if they're a formal facilitator, if they're just someone who holds space or holds meetings, that was a concern. The inability to keep things going beyond the initial workshop or initial meeting, initial gathering. That was a big one for me. Curious how that landed for y'all.
I have a follow-up question to that because I'm curious, how do we address something like this? Because it does feel like sometimes we design for these moments, or we design for, hey, we're going to have a 5-week leadership program. And I understand sometimes that is the best thing to do, but then how do you keep the momentum after the program? What have you seen that actually is powerful when you are designing to keep this in mind, the momentum in mind, and to design for the momentum as well?
Yeah, great question. I have some thoughts, Ali. I'd be curious if anything pops up for you first. Yeah.
You can kick us off.
Cool. One thing I've noticed is even just the participants knowing that what they're going to be doing during that session is that there's an intention for it to move forward. I feel like it just changes the dynamic. One thing I've seen in some gatherings that I have designed that turned into communities of practice that lasted for years is even the simple idea of we're going to have dedicated note takers in addition to our dedicated facilitators who are going to be capturing insights, because we want those insights to be something that you all get to review and you all get to choose how you carry forward. Like just like that level of intentionality, you could still have this is a 5-week program container, but by just alone having that extra design of like what you're saying is important because it could influence our future, our collective future. I've always found that that's a cool starting point, but curious if anything else has come up for you all.
Absolutely. It's almost the gift of having a scribe and a witness to the group, in addition to everyone who is that more active or traditional participant being there as active participants of the experience and co-creating together. But I've always found it really generous and quite poetic when there is someone who is there in service of witnessing the group, someone who is a partner in synthesis, and someone who gives permission for spaciousness. They're saying, entrust me because I am in some way maybe being the eyes or the ears or the visualizer of this experience, giving you those nuggets to come back to in your own time, in your own best place within you to then revisit or integrate or spend more time with some of those insights that did arise in the live time. And that
I love
personally has allowed me to, when I'm in the participant role, that's allowed me to sustain my own commitment to the work, to the practice, to whatever is being developed internally and relationally within those spaces. And I love when there's that, what almost feels to me like this precious gift to come back to, whether it's the visualist in the room who's doing some scribing of a more visual representation of a moment in the event or the learning journey, the experience, or someone who is being the eyes and ears, like you said, Cole, maybe more of that note-taking capacity, capturing the gems and the treasures from the group, and making that easeful to come back to in your own best time.
Yeah. Well said.
Love that. Love that. The only other thing I would maybe add to that would be this the power of intentional design. You know, like when you're designing a space, like what is it that you really want out of it? And sometimes if you want people to just go through a program, then they will go through a program, you know. But like, oh yeah, we have all these lectures and all these things. That's great. Okay, I understand. But if you design with what is a person coming in with and what are they leaving out with, you know, like just to be intentional into what are you truly transferring there. And I feel like the one big component that can help is to realize that all humans are work in progress. We all learn in our own pace, and we all have our minds and traumas and emotions and lifestyles and lives and all these things. And when you keep that in mind, then the concept of non-completion is very important as a design principle, that, hey, we're actually always work in progress. And that really helps if you design a space that creates the environment for people to touch a little bit of that and support with one another with that, where they are, and learning and growing and making it exciting, and something that we use the language of transformative as well. Then it's, you know, that continuation, that momentum continues, not because you're pushing it, because you have planted something through in that space that has reached people in such a way that they want more and they want to push forward in so many different ways. So I do feel like it's a big challenge that many organizations are facing, and it's a really awesome aha moment to dive deep into. So thanks, Cole, for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That resonates. Mentor, what's an aha that has been lingering with you since you first dove into the report?
I think the one thing that really struck me was a little bit of a confirmation, but more like, yo, this makes sense. You know, it kind of hit me. It was this, you know, facilitation as a leadership skill. And to me, that actually that language, that we've talked about it as a team, but to actually see that is being recognized, that, hey, all great leaders do is facilitate. If you really think about it, they have, let's say, a CEO of a company or a director of an organization. ultimately they're organizing many meetings to organize the people, to make things easier, to have a vision, to set up some outcomes. And to me, that felt like is such an important aha for all of us to have, and to ask ourselves, hey, how are we facilitating in our leadership? And what does that look like? Because anybody can tell you that if you want to change somebody, you don't change them by telling them that they need to change or all these things. You hold the space for them to realize that they need to change. Like this is a small tweak here, but it's a big one. And I feel like leaders that are successful realize of the importance of creating space for people to have their own insights, and not just for you to tell people what to do. That's how we unleash the true power of creating change, and it's all with this facilitation skill in mind. So that was one thing that really struck me, and I'd love to hear if that resonates, or if you have anything to add to that.
But of course, I feel like this is a nudge towards the internal value together that we, as a group of three, always come back to, is that devotion to the collective intelligence, for that to be able to come forward and arise in any spaces that we are space holders within, or partnering with the folks who are holding that space in live time. What does it take to devote to new levels of how we unlock the spaciousness, the skillfulness, and the freedom within each individual to be willing to know that there's something here that is beyond what I, as an individual leader, could steward in this moment or create in this moment, and leaning into that trust of, I trust that in this collective space with my team, my organization, my extended community, or this group of peers that I know nothing about, but we're all in this experience together, that establishing that trust and then the space for that trust to lead the way forward, giving permission to then all those individual bits to add up into a collective intelligence. That is such an exciting pursuit that I never get tired of. And the gems, the treasures that come out of that are oftentimes the things that participants report back being the reminders, the moments, the parts of their experience that they're coming back to again and again, their aha moments within, an experience that probably felt very personal, very individual at times. The thing that they hold on to, maybe that spark that grew into a flame from this experience, this fellowship, this event, the flame they return to is the spark of something that was shared, something that was collective.
I love that. Yeah, the one thing I'd add onto it in the mentor, I think it's such a good one to call out. And in a way, I feel like that's what's made the conversations we've had on facilitating change so far special. Like there's a handful of wonderful podcasts out there that are really about facilitators as a profession. I think the conversations we've been having are leaders who are facilitators. And that's the really amazing thing. Like the amount of conversations we've had where, and I know, Mentor, you've experienced this too, and anyone who's listened into the episodes leading up to now, there's been a lot of moments where this amazing leader kind of in the midst of the conversation says, oh, I never thought of myself as the facilitator, but that's exactly what I do. So, having this acknowledgement that facilitation is not just this niche profession, this person who shows up with a bunch of sticky notes and fidget spinners and stuff, but they're a leader who creates transformative spaces to move through things, to feel differently, to think differently. That's the thing that really excites me. And I think you called out such a meaningful part of this report that I think in a way makes it as relevant to any leader as it does to someone who identifies as a facilitator. So yeah, thank you for bringing that. I think it's deeply, deeply meaningful.
Thanks, team. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's more of these, please. And I'm curious, Ali, what stood out to you? What was an aha moment for you?
Yeah, I definitely have a nugget that I want to get to. And one response to Cole before I get there is this reminder that has come to me again and again. First, in the topic of leadership, which is that it is often not very valuable to claim your leadership in a certain area. It is much more something that has to be experienced and done in tandem with people that are around you on your team, in your community, in your family, who feel that the quality of leadership has been received for them. And then this becomes perhaps a bigger part of your personal identity of, oh, okay, I've seen this reflected back from my team or my community or my family that they're receiving me as a leader in this topic or this domain, and the identity can build in a more healthy way from there. And the same goes with facilitation of there's this aspect of talking with leaders and people that for so long absolutely have been facilitators in terms of how someone from the field, the outside looking in, would see them and cherish the gifts and the skills that they're bringing and see absolutely those facilitative leadership skills in action, being able to spot them pretty easily. And that's one of those gifts that by observing and witnessing that and calling that out in the world, more people get to self-identify with that as a label or an expression of their work, their co-creations getting out into the world. And then I think we also have this other side of people who do claim the facilitator, tag of their identity perhaps a bit too early. And there's the need as a field to create more spaces for the practice, for the evolution of facilitation, so that we're also not overly identifying with that. It's the tension, right, of how much do we identify with that while still recognizing that this is a lifelong practice for anyone who is saying that they are a facilitator, that they aspire to be a facilitator. And that's a tension that I personally have grappled with for a long time, of looking back in parts of my own history and journey where I wouldn't have used that as an initial descriptor of certain experiences or work in the world. But then I look back later on and see that that was reflected back to me from the community. And sometimes that's one of my favorite parts of how I now relate to being a facilitator, is the spaciousness to reflect on all the past moments and experiences while still holding the duty and the responsibility of what does it take to be the facilitator that today's world and that your community and that really sensitive spaces need a skill set and a type of leadership that does need to be honed and practiced over a very long time. I'll pause there. It's a reflection that I've been playing with in my head, and this is my attempt to get it out to you both. But does that resonate with anything that you've been navigating in your own journeys?
For sure. And even if you look at the state of the world now, since we opened this can of worms, we have enough food to solve all the hunger crisis, but what we don't have is actually proper collaboration. Like we don't really know how to see each other as brothers and sisters yet. We still haven't figured out how to resolve conflicts peacefully in some ways. Like there's still still wars happening, still so much violence, and we still have not figured out a way to do that all in harmony with Earth and the natural world. And I do feel like that is part of us not knowing how to be in spaces that bring the best out in people, that actually not suppress the egos, but actually free from egos in some sort of ways, to come to a bigger ego as human brothers and sisters, like just like as one as humanity. And that is actually what we need a lot of. And our decision-making process is in society is dividing us. That's why the polarization is happening so much. You got people voting for or against something, 50-50. You're either left or right, and, how about the whole? How about the togetherness? How about the us coming together for the good of all? What does that look like? And to do that, in theory, we can talk about it a lot, but actually we can do it in practice too. And that's the calling of facilitation. It is how do we come to places, not just to come together and try to brainstorm things out, but come together as human beings, as brothers and sisters. Come together like that, figure out how to actually relate to one another in a way that, you evokes compassion, evokes resonance in one another, and then taking action, because those two bits are really important for us to solve so many of the challenges that we face as humanity. And of course, that's a reflection of us trying to also address these challenges in our teams, in our homes, in our environments, and also within ourselves. So that's what that thought triggers over here.
Love it. Ali, what was any other ahas that were kind of big themes that came for you?
As is Ali style, my big thing was a little thing, which is something that touched me from one of the experts that contributed to the report. And this is one thing that I love that the SessionLab team did, which is for each section of the report, they had an expert perspective come in. It gives some more zoomed out commentary to the more juicy bits, the data-driven bits, and make it more sessionable to each of us. So what I found really beautiful, simple, powerful for myself was from Romy Alexandra, an incredible learning experience designer and facilitator, was a reminder. And this was pointing to the Latin root of the word facilitation, which is facilis, meaning to make easier. And I loved that reminder. I've thought about that so many times since making my way through the report, which is, as facilitators, how do we step in to shape moments, spaces, co-creation, exploration individually, together, to make collaboration easier and to make really anything in a space that could otherwise take days, months, years to uncover, whether it's at an individual or collective level, that how do we bring that permission for easefulness to enter the space where people are bringing their version of their current best, whether that's their skills or their mindsets or just the way, the energy with which they're showing up, the aliveness of how they're showing up. And I love that reminder to work and play and create in honor of that original Latin root, to make easier. And when we think of facilitation stepping in as a partner to so many different types of processes, it reminds us that it is a duty we have to know as a group what are the things that can maybe be removed or cut out, things that maybe drain aliveness from a group, or things that add to complexity, or ways that we can spend 10 minutes aligning a group in a certain way that then make that next hour so much more fruitful, so much more cohesive, so much more what it ought to be than if we skipped those 10 minutes at the start. And then we need 10 days to do the same thing that somehow was made possible. So I really love that. And I'm sure we all have our examples of this, the moments when time warp has happened in a facilitated space where something completes, or maybe day one of a day 3 process is complete. And we have that moment where we settle, we pause, and something strikes our brain and our heart that says, whoa, was all of that really in that amount of time, in that type of space, where you then a little beyond that moment realize there was some time and space warp that happened that enabled something truly powerful, potentially magical. I believe in the magic personally, and just much more easeful, the way that we can reflect on when there's a bit of time and space after that thing. Cole, I saw you nodding during that. Does that speak to you?
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything to add. I think you really beautifully described it. Yeah, just being attentive to the wonder, being attentive to the magic and the way that things emerge. Like, I think that's such a, I think as much as holding space is about designing the space well, is about engaging the people well, I think it's also that like training to like witness and be with what is emerging. So yeah, really, really love it. Nothing else to add.
Couple of other more themes that show up into the report. Maybe we can dive a little bit deeper into just some of the themes, but it's really fascinating. Yeah, it is really fascinating. You know, there are things about the vision of the facilitation. It is about also the tech at hands. What does that mean? And the role of AI to it. There's also facilitation as a leadership skill, also where facilitation is happening. Is it in-house? Is it external? What are the trends, challenges there? There's also some of the impacts of the facilitation. Why is it crucial and why it's needed? So many things here, team. What is one area that here, like you feel like everybody should know about? Even though we did touch a little bit on the aha moments, and it does feel like, we did touch some of these points, and at the same time, there are some interesting sections in this report, and I invite people to read it, and you can find the description in our description here, in the links in the description in the episode. But curious, Cole, Ali, anything to reflect upon that feels like, it's an interesting insight and thread to pull through this.
Yeah. One for me is on the theme that you talked about. One of the ones that we mentioned and we'll distill in the show notes is this heading, this idea of like facilitation everywhere, why it's growing, why it matters. I think we've already kind of talked about it a little bit, but I think one thing the report does a really good job about is talking about both facilitation as an external skill. How do you bring together convenings, collaborations, partnerships, unlikely allies, but then also like, how do you think about facilitation as this internal skill? And internal in this context, I mean internal to your organization. And so there's lots of great survey responses and resources that are pointed to for people who want to be better facilitators, better space holders. And they talk about a lot of different reasons why this is important and why this is meaningful. The one that really, really stood out the most for me, and I think one that anyone who's leading an organization, anyone who's a part of an organization should really be paying attention to, is this idea that more people being intentional about the art of holding spaces for others, the more we have that, the more co-leadership we will have. It like good facilitation, good space holding, transformative spaces, to me, is the antidote for top-down, super hierarchical leadership. Like if everyone is empowered to hold better space, we're just going to get better things because more people's voices are going to be included. More people's perspectives are going to be honored. And people are just going to feel better about showing up because they actually feel like they can engage. Like I think about with any of the clients we work with, any of the partners, one of the main things that we get brought into, like the pain point we are consistently there to help them solve, is a lack of engagement. And I think this facilitation everywhere is just kind of a foundational piece when you're trying to create more authentic engagement. So that was the one that came up for me. I'd love to hear anything that sparks for either of you.
Ali, do you want to share something?
Yeah, I'm sitting with that still. I know we sit with it most days together. I love what you said, Cole, as a reminder of what we are inviting others into. So often, let's say we work with a team on some way that we're supporting them to facilitate within, and they often think it's about, what am I giving my team? And we're helping them design something for their team. And then all is said and done, and perhaps the person touched even the most by the process was the leader that we worked with. Right? That initial impression of, oh, this will help them so much. And then they themselves are very touched, very transformed, very included in the process in a way that perhaps they didn't give themselves permission to be as included in that process before. And I love busting down those barriers to what someone thought they were making possible for others, whether it was their team or an external group of stakeholders, participants in a program. And then you see, even at the level of who is resourcing that space or stewarding that space or supporting the team that's implementing that program or that event, that it is also them who gets deeply touched, informed, and tuned into why facilitation is this key leadership competency that is not only something they are requiring of others or helping build skills in for others, but that is a reminder to them, oh yeah, this is the skill I'm constantly returning to, that is a necessity to return to practice more deeply, and is something waiting and at the ready within each of us.
Love that.
Yeah, that's really nice. And at the same time, I wonder, this having a facilitator in-house, for teams, I feel like it's incredible. And at the same time, part of being human is that we have blind spots. And usually, I like the American term, you drink the Kool-Aid, and sometimes you are in an organization that everybody's speaking a certain language and doing a certain thing, and they've done that before, and they've drank the Kool-Aid, and sometimes to have an external force come in, external facilitation, doesn't mean that the in-house facilitator is not capable. I feel like actually if that happens, it actually shows an extra courage and strength and creativity and leadership from the in-house facilitator for inviting an external facilitator to just help and get a new perspective and maybe see and sense some blind spots that need to be addressed. So that does feel like, even though sometimes it does feel like a competition, even among facilitators. And I do feel like in true and honest sense, it does make sense to bring as many perspectives to this, as many support and ideas and techniques of holding space to maybe unravel things that you did not see were needed. So I do feel like that's not only good for the team, but you as a facilitator. I think all of us here and most of our guests, if not all, have learned facilitation by seeing others facilitate. So yes to in-house, yes to out of house, but yes to also being open to learning from one another, being open to collaborating, being open that maybe we don't know, because if we say we don't know, then we're only willing to learn. And sometimes what I see that there's a lot of in-house facilitation, but also it's like we know. And when we know, there's no growth, there's no learning. Usually it is the I don't know that opens up that dimension for growing and impact.
For sure. And I think the organizations that do choose to increase their own capacity by bringing in dedicated roles for in-house facilitation, I would put a bet on it, have a much healthier internal culture and practice of embracing the I do not know, the we do not know, that then is opening space for innovation, opening space for creativity, opening space for new perspectives within their organization to get unearthed and seen and worked with in new ways. And I want to highlight for the audience that when we say in-house facilitation, this is still, I believe, a term that we're all reorienting around, getting familiar with. This is referring to the practice of having employees rather than external consultants that you're bringing into your team or your organization be able to design and lead workshops or meetings or events and gatherings, and that they are really the ones holding the torch for how collaborative sessions and things happen within the organization. And one thing that stood out to me, SessionLab, as field builders, as folks putting on this survey, this was an entirely new section to the survey this year. This was something that they saw was a trend building and brewing. And then this year, as the community reported out, this was really a year where in-house facilitation took a new stand and is being used in new and improved and more consistent ways as one of these primary ways that facilitation can and will continue becoming more and more mainstreamed. So I found that hopeful, insightful, interesting. I definitely want to ask more of my friends, what are the examples of this happening within their teams and companies? Because the more we spot those stories and those case studies of, oh gosh, this is where having someone in-house who knew all the nuances, who's a part of the culture we're building, who knows the in and outs of our pain points because they are also living that organizationally each and every day alongside the rest of their colleagues, why that is also a super skill and a superpower if we're celebrating that in tandem with external facilitation that, as we know, is already very alive and well in the field.
And if you can sense, the report has a lot of things, friends, a lot of insights and also a lot of meaning making from a lot of people. So, as we're reflecting on it, also I have a question for you all. And Cole, maybe I'll start with you. What's missing from the report? What was something that you wish you learned more from where the state of facilitation is? Any themes, any thoughts, any ideas, any techniques or whatever? What's missing? Tell us. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah. I think as we were all just so excitedly going through this report, it's as we've said before, I think this report will resonate with any leader who is trying to create transformative space. But shout out to SessionLab for creating something that is truly a holiday present for a nerdy facilitator to open. I think we all very voraciously dove into it. Yeah,
both hands raised.
Yeah. And what, there were a couple things that, of course they can't cover everything, but to me, it was interesting. There are a couple themes that we noticed were missing. And funny enough, they're all things that I feel like we as Changemaker Allies practice a lot. We can go into one or all of them. I think we've got a little bit of space. So maybe I'll just start with the first one. And that was, there was a lot of conversation about virtual space holding. There was even conversation about hybrid space holding. The one thing that I feel like got a little bit buried is, as we're at this stage of, COVID and our new relationship with it, we're seeing more and more people come back to gathering in person. And I found it very notably absent from the report, conversations about how do we hold more engaging in-person space? Like if there was one thing that I could think of that resonates with a lot of the clients that we all work with, it is we don't want to throw conferences like they've always been. We don't want just the sage on stage talking at us, the panel. We want engaging in-person conferences. And I have to say that the thing historically, and I know this from all of our shared experiences, that we've been able to spark the most delight in people is in reimagining how people gather in person, because we still, like, as human beings, are attending so many disengaging in-person gatherings. And it was notable to me that there wasn't a continued conversation about how do we band together to take a stand on not doing that anymore. So that was one for me. Curious if that landed for you all.
Oh yeah, it's landing directly to heart and mind, because I've been a student. I've been to conferences. I've been to programs, workshop, fellowships that were just draining, like truly draining. And yeah, so I wonder, why are we not banding together to do something about, like, elevating the way we hold space? It's such a sacred thing, and especially with a loneliness epidemic, it does feel like we are craving so much connection, so much belonging, and yet, there's such a cry for that, and I do feel like that's something definitely that we need more of. The other thing I would add and bundle with what you shared, Cole, is the idea of well-being. It does feel like, we are human beings. We're not just human doings. And and sometimes a lot of these sessions are designed for human doings, and I do feel like it misses out on the well-being component. Because imagine if you're in a conference and then you come back from the conference and you're more rested than before you went there. Like, doesn't happen. You're usually drained because you're sitting for so long, you're talking, your mind is so active, and then it just feels like, my God, that was exhausting. I need to go sleep in the hotel. And yeah, I understand that's a nice thing, but classrooms miss the point so much about well-being. Like, there's never a check-in moment. It's not by design. And ultimately, the quality of the outcomes that we're going to have in facilitation or in life in general, it depends on the quality of the well-being that we have. Like, if we want to have flowers, that's great. You want to have good performance, good like changing the world, all these different things. But it's like wanting flowers but no soil, flowers but no water, flowers but no sunlight. And
Beautiful.
I do crave some more of that type of conversation, because and another trend here, we're getting to see the number of these retreats, for instance, increasing retreats. And yes, maybe retreats more for healing retreats, and people are doing all types of retreats that they find so meaningful and powerful. But also, that's too much just a being, like, oh, let's go and work on our traumas. I understand that's important. And I'm not saying that all the sessions should have that, but where's that middle ground? We don't want to be a spiritual retreat, but also we don't want to be just an intellectual masturbation fest. How do you find that middle ground to do that? And that's what I'm craving to learn more and see how people are doing that and bringing that in their sessions.
Love it.
A beautiful reminder and a beautiful call to action, because that is absolutely something that needs to be in the lived and practiced category, and probably will not go very far as we just are in those cycles of the thinking on loop around that theory to practice, a bridge that we all try to cross as often as we possibly and humanly can. It does remind me, Mentor, of one quote that stood out this is from Romy Alexandra again. She was talking about this responsibility. Absolutely, right? As facilitators, we bring so much responsibility into the roles that we bring and the jobs that we do. And she was talking about the tension of each of us bringing our own spin, our own flavor on as facilitators, while still doing the role justice with how we build our skills, how we deepen our practice, how we bring feedback, and also the space to co-create with the people we're serving so that we are actually crafting the learning journeys, the experiences, the gatherings that work for them. And as she was talking a bit to that tension of, right, this own unique facilitation style while still bringing the insights, the needs, the trends, the demands of the field, she was pulling a Brené Brown quote of something that comes up often: who we are is how we lead. That coming as a phrase that we have all heard in some shape or form. And Romy was challenging us to also bring that and stretch it into the facilitation space. So not only who we are is how we lead, but who we are is how we facilitate. And then you can take that into other layers of who we are is how we participate. And that it can always go back, Mentor, to this being first and then doing. And I think absolutely as a facilitator, that's something I think and reflect on a lot of the how are we showing up? How are we also clearing our own energy and space within ourselves to truly meet a moment where it is uniquely at, and not only bringing our own closed bubbles into those spaces. And I love that reminder that Romy invited us into. I believe that was from the impact section of the report. And there was another beautiful quote just to highlight for our audience here. These are words that out of all the thousands of respondents were some of the ones that stood out the most and most often to the open-ended question of how would you describe the impact that facilitation has had on the success of your projects? And I'll just give out a few of those words that really stood out: essential, crucial, critical, important, vital, transformative, mind-blowing, game-changing, engine oil. And you can feel the energy behind those words, right? When someone is reporting out the impact of their experience of a perception of facilitation done right, that it is not just feeling like this bonus thing, this nice to have thing. For them, it felt like in that project, in that experience, in that part of my journey or our shared journey, this was the thing that had to be there and done right and done well for me to feel that, one, success within my own experience was had and received, and I'm assuming very likely the success for the group as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that essential. Yeah, that essential piece. And I think, Ali, you so perfectly really articulated another one of the things that I think we as a group saw as missing from the report, and that was like a real emphasis on the skills to help people practice the inner movements, the inner work, like the importance of bringing that foundation of stability, what you bring to the work. So yeah, thank you for bringing that. Speaking of essential, I don't think there's anyone around the world right now who wouldn't view being able to be in conversation with the unlikely other, be in conflict as an important thing for these complex times. But it was something that was kind of lacking to me a little bit glaring in its lackingness in the report. The not enough conversations about what is it to hold space for conflict, what is it to hold space for coming together across polarization. And I'm curious if there was any anything to add that you all had related to that one point, that other piece that we thought could be elaborated on more.
Yeah, the different ways we show up as facilitators. Yeah, I did see some people, like very strictly business focused and like how to make our team meetings better, which is, one aspect. There's people who are facilitating, like AA meetings. And there's people who are facilitating, conflict and working with refugees and all these things. And there's such a powerful, like group of people out there, and I was craving to actually learn more what's working. What is the state,
Yeah,
what's
me
working
too.
and what's not working, what support do they need, and because this is part of our mission and vision as Changemaker Allies. We're the allies to the people that are holding space, and we can bring perspective, we can bring tools and all these things, but first we have to understand where people are at, and what's the what challenges are they facing, what is stopping them from creating transformative spaces. Is it just, hey, here's some activities that you got to do, or is it like a deeper commitment, or maybe seeing something else in action, or maybe whatever that is? I'm craving to learn more of that, and actually see how we can also best support other facilitators that are out there.
Love it.
For sure. I noticed it sprinkled throughout the report that folks were pointing to, especially in these expert insights section by section. They were pointing to what you're saying, Cole, but their collective points all, when I saw them collectively making my way through the report, it stood out that for sure this is an invitation for all of us to step forward with our own stories, our own examples. I know that one of the experts in the report was really helping make the case for why us learning how to storytell what is happening, and especially when we have data around the impact we're having, really clear case examples, that this is the time and this is the moment for us to share those widely and freely with each other, so that we can be seeing the subtle layers of how facilitation is doing some of the most important work in the world that it can do, and whether that's navigating complexity, reducing really challenging environments to become more work withinable. And I even noticed on the resources list, right, on one of the top 10 recommended facilitation books, we heard that Facilitating Breakthrough, How to Remove Obstacles, Bridge Differences, and Move Forward Together, with Adam Kahane, am I saying his last name right? That he was this year one of the top facilitation books. He also has the book Collaborating with the Enemy, another new book coming out in a couple of months, I believe. And he's really someone that is bravely stepping into that space. I know that, Cole, you'll have a conversation with him on the pod soon, which I can't wait to hear. And I hope that we as a team always make that space to come back to these most tension-filled and absolutely urgent realities, that how will facilitation step up and meet those moments, those spaces, those tensions where is the most needed. And this is something that we will all navigate together, figure out together. But we're needing some more boldness of those conversations and spaces to practice becoming more and more present. So let it be so. May it be so.
Yes, Ali, that's a great way to end this episode, even though 1 hour never feels enough. There's so much to talk about. And friends, if you have ideas, if you'd like to reach out, please do. Cole, Ali, and I are available and eager to connect with fellow facilitators or fellow change makers everywhere. We're here. And make sure to rate our podcast, give us feedback, recommend guests. We're all open. And thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Ali, for joining and guiding us through this. And of course, Cole, thanks for being a great co-partner into making this podcast happen. And a special thank you to also our editor, Gent, who has been in the background doing all the sound magic. So thanks, everybody. Thank you. And we'll see you soon.
Wonderful.
Everyone,
Bye for
thank
now.
you.